Hey guys, my name's Ken and this video is going to be all about how to use a whippersnipper or line trimmer depending on what you guys call them. Now this is a straight shaft. It's the type I use on the job. So that's what I'm going to show you how to use today. First thing we need to talk about is safety equipment. I'll just go over quickly. You need glasses, smash proof glasses. Got to wear them while you're using your machine, otherwise you'll take an eye out. Earmuffs, ear protection, otherwise you'll get sore ears. Shoes always help. Closed in shoes, you can injure your foot. I had a friend who cut his foot on a lawnmower. And I always wear long sleeve clothing. You don't have to, but I always do because my engines get hot after using them for a while and I tend to burn my arm, especially if the exhaust is pointing towards my arm. In summer I tend to wear shorts, but it does hurt when you get hit by rocks, so long pants are preferred. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about how to use a whippersnipper. The first thing you need to understand is which way the head turns. The reason you need to know that is because then you have control over where some of the debris goes. There's two reasons you want to know that. Number one, you don't want to hit rocks against windows or cars or people or yourself. And number two, if you're up against a fence and you have a longer lawn, you want to use the whippersnipper to get the grass flicking out towards the inside of the lawn. You don't want it along the edges because you want to use your mower to then pick it up. That's why we use the whippersnipper before we do the edges. Sometimes I'll use it afterwards, but that's usually if I have a ride-on job and I'm not sure how much I'll need to whippersnip and I don't want to waste time finding out. So on a small yard I'll always use my whippersnipper first, then I can pick up any clippings with the mower. Okay, so my head, I'm sorry I'm not shooting this outside just yet. I'm still a bit nervous shooting in front of people, but I do have video footage later of me on the job. So my head, when it's going, spins that way. So the cord comes around, hits this and it cuts it. The cord, so it's the right length. Now it's important to know this because depending on which direction you're walking in will depend on where the grass goes. So if you're walking forwards while you do it, the grass is going to shoot out there, that side, because you're hitting it with the front of the cord. The front of the head is meeting the grass first. If you walk backwards, it's now hitting it towards the back. So it's going to throw the grass more into the guard, which will then throw it out into the lawn. If you're walking forward, it'll throw it towards the fence because it's hitting there first and shooting that way, whereas it should be going out around the back. Now, I do it both ways depending on the lawn. If the grass isn't very long, then you don't need to worry too much about where it's going. If it's quite long, I'll want to pick it up with a mower, so I might walk forwards and then I'll come back backwards, however I feel like doing it. But I want the grass to be thrown back onto the lawn, not up against the fence. So, how do I actually hold the whippersnipper when I'm using it? So basically you're holding it like this. Hand on the accelerator side, grabbing this lightly. Now how hard you hold the end depends on what head you're using really, but all you're doing is balancing the machine with that hand. Now the head, you want the head to be tilted slightly to the side and you're moving across, you're only cutting with the tip. You're not cutting with the whole cord, you're just cutting with the tip. So the actual head is tilted slightly to the side. You're moving across like that, backwards and forwards. You can have it flat if you're confident enough, but you don't want to cut from this side. This side will dig into the ground, make it jerk like that, because the head is spinning that way. So you want to cut whichever side the head's spinning, that's the way you want to cut. Try to cut the other side, it'll just go and dig straight into the ground. You'll leave big marks. So when you're moving forward, it's relatively easy because you're moving forward, you know how to walk forward. You're just walking, sliding it forward, one step in front of the other, obviously. When you're walking backwards though, you're almost crossing over. So you're not trying to move the whippersnipper itself, you're just moving your body. So you have this leg I'm going to have straight all the time. This one will cross over all the time. Straight, cross over. Keeps you straight. So you want your whippersnipper to be straight all the time. You move your body around your machine. Now, that's going forward and backwards across the tops. How do I do the vertical edges, which is what most people will be wanting to know. Now there's lots of different ways you can do it, but I like to do it mostly like this. So I'm locking the top half of my body, I'm locking that up. All this, that's locked. The rest of me can move around, but that stays. So I prefer to do it from the concrete side, the hard surface side. I find that I get a straighter edge that way, and my edges are thinner when I do it that way. I like thin edges, some guys like thicker edges, depending on what you're doing it for. You might want to keep the edge thicker because you want it to last longer, but I prefer thinner edges. That way if I make a mistake, you can't really tell to start with, but if it's a big mistake, then it'll grow back pretty quickly. If you do a thick edge, it's going to take forever to come back. Now if you do it from the other side, that's fine too. I don't like to do it because I'm not good at it. Usually when I'm doing it from the other side, it's a garden bed. Okay, so you can walk forwards doing that, or you can also walk backwards. When you're walking backwards, you'll dig more of the soil out. It's good if you're cutting edges back in, but generally I just walk forwards with it. Walking backwards chews the cord too much and you're fighting the machine all the time. You end up getting cramps in your arm because you're always fighting the machine. If you walk forward, it's just clearing the channel out and cutting it a little bit. Yeah, that reminds me, when you're cutting with your whippersnipper, you're just clearing out the channel. Don't make it a point to cut grass. That might sound weird, but what you're really doing is trying to get your line back. So you're just cutting the tips of the grass out. If you're there making sure that you have to cut some grass, if you're obsessed with doing that, then you're just going to make your edges wider and wider and wider. All you really want to do is clear out the channel. So a couple of the other ways I do use my machine. If I'm on a garden edge where I can't get to it from the hard side, instead of using it like that from the garden side, the grass side, I'll do it like this. Tucked up under there, using my chest to hold the machine straight. I don't particularly like doing it that way, but that's how I use it when I'm on the grass side. I've also seen guys using it like this. Where they hold it and walk forward like that. I don't, and I even seen guys doing it backwards. I don't use that method because I don't like it. It's just a comfort thing for me. But really, you need to know a few different ways to use your machine, because not every surface, not every edge will be the same. So there are a few different ways to use it, but I'm always locking this part of my body. Everywhere else can move, but I'm locking up here. If I want straight edges, it's how I move that matters. So it's always the crossing over. I want to move straight. twist it a little walking backwards. You can do it the other methods, but I'm not so good at doing those ones. So I'm going to show you me on the job using the actual machine, but I want to talk to you firstly about using the engine properly. So you don't have to have it revving off its face all the time. In fact, most of the time you won't be doing that unless you're doing big properties. You play with the revs. Yeah, I'll let you listen. Now I'm not just playing with the revs because I think it sounds cool. What happens is your cord slackens off a bit when you lose the revs. So if you're giving it some, letting it go, giving it some, letting it go, it's making the cord flex a little bit. Now that's handy if you're up against a fence or in a corner and there's two hard surfaces. Say you're in the corner of a fence and you can't get in there properly when you're just revving the guts out of it. So play with the revs, the cord flexes and it changes shape and it'll get in there. Now sometimes you can't get in there doing it that way either, so you might just get the machine, obviously not this high, I'm just doing that for the camera. You get the end of the machine, you might go at it like that and then come at a different angle like that. These machines are really flexible, they're there to make your mowing easier, so use them as much as you can in all different ways that you can. There's no real hard and fast rules. So now let's have a look at me doing some jobs using a couple of these different techniques. The other thing you need to consider is where you're throwing the rocks. So quite often I've got customers who are out and they leave their car in the driveway but they still want their lawn done. You've got a Mercedes sitting there, or it doesn't even have to be an expensive car. It might be someone's pride and joy. You don't want to be throwing rocks at that because you're going to have to pay to get that fixed. And it wrecks your reputation. If you're silly enough to damage other people's property, that's a problem. I mean, it does happen because sometimes you're in a position that you can't get out of, but you try to avoid it at all costs. Now my machine throws rocks if I'm holding it upwards like that, which is how I like to hold it. It's throwing the rocks back that way. So if I've got windows behind me here, or windows, I'm not going to edge like this because it's going to throw rocks straight at the windows. So I'll go this way. The other thing you saw was I had to go underneath a tree there. So a straight shaft is good for that. It's more versatile than a bent shaft. I can go under trees. Quite often I've got customers with overgrown plants and things. They don't want me to do it because they keep telling me that they're going to do it. But you've still got to get around that stuff. You've got to get underneath it. You might have to edge under it like I did there. And a straight shaft is good for that. Gives you more reach. If you're doing big properties and you've got big areas, maybe it's really wet and you can't go on it properly and you need to whippersnip that, it's easier to have a straight shaft. It gives you much more reach. So this is the end result. The video you saw, I wasn't actually cutting in that video because when I did do the lawn, I forgot to hit record, so I was just recreating what I did about 2 seconds before. So that's what you can do with a whippersnipper on a short lawn, especially if it's wet or something and you don't want to damage the lawn. Now see what I mean by thin edges? They look super sharp. If you have your big thick ones, I mean, if that's your personal preference, then great, but to me. So there's just a few techniques that I use on little lawns, and it's also why I prefer a straight shaft, because you can flip around. That's only a couple of techniques. You wait until I get onto some lawns where I've got to go under trees and things. Just little things you pick up as you go along. So the edges of this path are a bit rubbish, and that's because the council or whoever does the development around here just put a path in, so that'll come back nicely over the next summer. Well guys, that's it. I hope you liked the video. If you did, then like, subscribe and ring the bell to get notifications when I make a new video. If you have anything to add, then put it in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.